So here's some tips that will help you kind of sort the material out. The only acid-fast organisms are mycobacteria, and there's only 2 or 3 of those. So the other 47 are not acid-fast. And that's a typical acid-fast rod. The spirochetes, chlamydia, rickettsia, and mycoplasma, of which there's probably about 8 total, do not gram-stain at all. The rest are broken up into 2 groups of gram-positive and gram-negative. So about 38 or 40 are gram-negatives and gram-positives, and the other 10 or 12 will be either in the mycobacteria group or one of these atypical bacteria mentioned in this note. There's the spirochetes, chlamydia, and rickettsia. Many of the cocci have that prefix in their name, such as streptococcus, staphylococcus, and enterococcus. So if you see these genera, you know they're round because they're cocci. So you don't have to remember those. They're right in front of your... The only anaerobes are Clostridium. Most of the other bacteria are facultative anaerobes, and there are a few strict ones, but the majority are facultative. So that satisfies a lot of the oxygen requirement. The only spore formers are Clostridium and Bacillus, and there's probably about 5 of those out of the 50. So all the other 45 are non-spore formers. So if you memorize the 5 that are, if it's not one of those 5, then you can say, no, it doesn't form spores. So some of this material, it's the way you approach it, makes it manageable. There is a spore-forming bacteria. This is Clostridium tetani. It causes tetanus. Notice the spores are on the end of the cell. It makes them look like little tennis rackets. All but about 8 or 9 of the organisms, the disease that they cause is in their name. For example, Vibrio cholera causes cholera. Neisseria gonorrhea causes gonorrhea. So here's my suggestion of how to learn these. Make flashcards on blue, pink, magenta, green, and orange cards. If you can't find the color cards, you can take a Sharpie or a felt tip pen and color the edges. Use green cards for spirochetes and orange cards for atypical bacteria such as chlamydia, rickettsia, and mycoplasma. Put the genus and species on one side of the card and the characteristics and disease on the back, like this. Escherichia coli. Hopefully you've all heard of this organism. On the back, it's a gram-negative rod. It's enteric. It's a facultative anaerobe. It's a non-spore former, and it causes foodborne gastroenteritis. So you can use these flashcards to memorize the organisms. I have gotten feedback from several students in nursing school that carry their flashcards with them to class because they never know what organisms the professor is going to mention, and even though they are fairly familiar with them, they can whip the card out in case they forget any of the factoids. For each unit test, there will be a section, and on the final exam, there will be a microbe test that will contain about 10 organisms, 10 new organisms, and 1, 2, or 3 of the previous set. You'll be able to add up all these small tests for a larger test grade, and if your average on this microbe set is greater than the lowest grade of one of your 4 unit tests, you can drop the low unit test score and put in the microbe test score. I would say that probably about half to 2/3 of the people end up doing that. This is not mandatory, it's strictly optional, but it's an insurance policy. And if you do it and you have a bad unit score test, it gives you one score that you can replace. Many of the people who use the microbe scores make anywhere from 85 to 100. So even if you didn't do that well on them and you made an 85, But say you made a 65 on one of the unit tests, an 85 is a lot better than a 65. It's very good insurance, and this information will help you later. So this is an example of the microbe test. They're usually matching. Most of these you only use once. There are a couple where you might use one of the characteristics twice, but there's approximately 10 on each exam, plus 1, 2, or sometimes 3 from the previous sets of bacteria. Again, you add all these up, divide by the total, and you get a percent. And if that percent is greater than one of your lowest unit exams, you get to replace it. So why do I require this? First, learning the information about the organism will mean more to you when you work with some of these organisms in the lab. You'll have a better understanding of what E. coli really is as an organism, or what B. subtilis or Pseudomonas aeruginosa. You'll just have a better feeling for these than just a name that has no meaning whatsoever. This will help you throughout the course, on my final exam, and on the department comprehensive exam. It will also help you a lot in the laboratory. It will save you a lot of time learning these in nursing school. I've gotten numerous feedback from nursing students who were so happy they learned all these in my course and they didn't have to learn them on the fly in nursing school. It saved them time, and they have a ton of stuff to learn anyway, so that was one less thing they had to worry about. You'll have a head start on understanding many things, both here and in nursing school. So when lecturers talk about some of these organisms in nursing school, you'll be familiar with them. They won't sound like some Greek name you've never heard of. I'm repeating an exercise I did last semester using the iClicker in class. It's an immediate response device that allows me to quiz you and also to probe your understanding of the concepts we cover in class before you get to the unit test. A lot of students like it because they feel more active in class participation. And again, one of the reasons is to find out your weaknesses before the exams, not during the exams. So if we presented a very complex concept, I can ask a couple of iClicker questions, determine if you got the information or you still don't understand it, and if we need to, we can repeat it. Many times when I'm doing that process, it will not count for a grade. It's just for information. You can use the responder device, like pictured to the right in the lower right, or you can use a smartphone. There is one disadvantage of using a smartphone. That is, the device to the right, the responder, sends a signal directly to a receiver I have plugged into my laptop. So it's a direct communication. If you use a smartphone, it has to go through the internet to their website, which then their website will send me a response. It's slower, and also sometimes it doesn't work because if there's interference with your phone accessing the internet through 3G or 4G, that can sometimes interfere with your answer. So I strongly urge you buy the responder and not use your smartphone. You will be able to sell your responder at the end of the semester, recover a lot of your costs, so it's not going to be that much extra cost to you. Like I said, $10 to $20 at the most. Part of the iClicker experience will involve daily questions. I will ask you questions about material we've covered, and I might ask you 1 or 2 questions about the material that's in the topic queue for that night. There's usually 2 to 4 questions per class. I will add all these up to get a score that will be 10% of your grade. Now, one of the things I do is that we may have like 15 classes we use the iClicker for daily questions. I don't count all 15. I will drop 3 of these to allow you a low score. Maybe you just had a bad night, you forgot your iClicker, or maybe you were absent. So I will drop 3 of these and only add up like 10 or 12 to get the score. So you will be able to have a little flexibility there in case some night you're not prepared or some night you have to be absent. Most of the questions are general questions from my chapter summaries, which you can find on my website, and or the study outline in the back of the book. They're important concepts. I try not to get too nitpicky or trivial with these. They tend to be major important points. So why do I require this? Well, one, of course, is to check your understanding before the exams. It's better to miss a small question there than to miss a bigger one on the exam. It's also to make you more actively engaged. One of the problems with lecturing is sometimes it tends to be too passive. And I feel if more people are actively engaged, it's just a better experience for you, and it's a better experience for me. Also use these to push the reading assignments to keep you current. It's very important. It's a good habit to get into for nursing school. You will not have time to get behind. If you get behind, you're just dead in the water. So you've got to learn to keep current, keep ahead of the curve, and keep pushing yourself. And part of this is to ensure that you have an excellent foundation for your future education and practice requirements. Again, it's to set this bar higher so that when you go to nursing school, you're prepared for what is going to be thrown at you, and that you will be able to survive and excel. So during the first class, I'm going to give you 3 background questions to kind of prime the iClicker queue. These won't count for a grade, but it will help me set up the queue so I know which responder belongs to you. And these 3 questions are you present? Yes or no. Did you complete A&P 1612? Yes or no. And have you been accepted to a nursing school? Yes or no. So from this information, I'll be able to identify your clicker ID with your name and set up a grade sheet. The assignment after the next class will be on Chapter 1, so be prepared. Your grade. As I mentioned when we were going through the syllabus, the 4-unit test will count 65%. However, you can replace your lowest unit test of these 4 with your microbe or your culture exam test. iClicker score will count 10%. Department final was 5%. And my final exam, which is Unit 5, will count 20% because it covers more material and is bigger than just the regular one of the 4-unit tests. And that will add up to 100 points. So, now it's time for old, new rules, taken from Bill Maher's Real Time. New rule. Again, the new rule is department final will be 5% of your grade. Do well. New rule. Makeup exams must be taken within a week of the original exam. That way you don't get too far behind. New rule. If you schedule to take a makeup exam and you don't show up at the agreed time, you will get a 0. Makeup exams may or may not have the same number of bonus questions as the original exam. New rule. There's no extra credit projects. Don't ask.
That's all, folks.